I turned 34 today. My birthday invitation clearly stated that dinner would begin at 6 cuts. I didn't want any gifts, just for people to be present. At 6:45, it hit me that no one was coming. It was a strange feeling, sitting there in my apartment, everything perfectly set up for a celebration that wasn't going to happen. I had this hope, this little flicker that maybe they'd surprise me, maybe they'd show up fashionably late with smiles and stories. But as the minutes ticked by, that hope just faded. At 7:12, my sister sent a text, "Too far to drive for just a birthday." And then my mom added, "Maybe next weekend, we're exhausted." It was like a punch to the gut, but what was I supposed to say? I didn't have the energy to argue. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Instead of replying, I logged into the foundation account I created 2 years ago. I updated every authorized name, removing everyone but myself, and then sent a single-line email. As of today, I paused all support. It felt liberating and terrifying, but mostly it felt like the right thing to do. At midnight, my phone started buzzing incessantly. My sister called 12 times. It was like she suddenly remembered I existed. But what really shook me was the push notification that lit up my phone at 12:47 a.m. It was from the bank saying, "Bank transfer declined. Insufficient authorization." The account was the Martin Family Relief Foundation, the one I'd been funding quietly. The sender was my mother. She had attempted to transfer $3,200, the same mother who said she was too tired to drive over for my birthday dinner. I remember sitting down hard on the couch, the wine glass slipping from my fingers and spilling onto my pants. My hands were shaking with rage, not surprise. It was in that moment that everything clicked. The truth was glaringly obvious. My role in this family had always been to provide, to be the safety net, the one who fixed things, but never the one who was celebrated or even acknowledged. 2 years ago, everything changed when my dad's heart attack wiped out their savings. I didn't hesitate, I didn't ask questions or give lectures. I quietly created a fund under my name, linked it to my corporate account, and started funneling money every month. They called it the family buffer. To them, it was like an ATM with emotional receipts. When my sister Isla lost her job for the 3rd time because she couldn't fit into the corporate structure, I paid her rent. When my mother's car broke down on her way to Bridge Club, I sent her $600 in less than an hour. When my cousin Devin wanted to rebuild his credit, I co-signed a small loan for him. I never saw any of that money come back, not even a thank you card. And the worst part? They never asked how I was doing, not once. They didn't ask when I was working 70-hour weeks to hit my KPIs and keep my position as senior project lead. They didn't ask when I canceled vacations to send them emergency transfers. They didn't ask when I started taking anxiety meds to fall asleep because I was so afraid of getting another need help at 2 a.m. Dutchen. Text. There was one moment that burned a hole in my memory. Last Thanksgiving, I couldn't make it home because of a work emergency. I FaceTimed everyone from my empty office, a tray of Chinese takeout in front of me. They passed the phone around like it was a nuisance. Isla waved with a wine glass in hand and said, "Workaholic vibes, as always." I joked, "Did you guys save me a plate?" My mom laughed and said, "Alexandra, baby, you're not really a food person." That was it. That was my place in their lives. Useful, not loved, not seen. I replayed those memories while watching the transfer failure screen, then scrolled through the transaction history. My stomach turned. Isla had pulled $1,000 3 weeks ago, labeled as professional development. That was the weekend she posted bikini pics from Cancun with the caption, "Find me where the Wi-Fi and the vibes are rich." Devin withdrew $500 labeled car repair. He doesn't even own a car, but he does play poker at the casino down the interstate. My mom had set up a recurring grocery transfer, $320 every 2 weeks. It had gone out like clockwork since March. I paid more to feed my mother than she ever did to show up for me. And then it hit me. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had chosen not to come because they didn't need me to be happy. They needed me to be useful. And when I stopped being useful, I became disposable. I stood up and grabbed the printed copies of my bank statements, the ones I kept in a file folder labeled Family Trust. I had tracked every payment, every favor, every dollar bled out of my account in the name of love. Love isn't supposed to leave you hollow. At 10:03 a.m., I emailed each of them individually. No group message, no sugarcoating. The subject line was the same. And effective immediately, I wrote, "You've withdrawn more than money. You've drained my time, my energy, my joy." I gave without asking for thanks. I trusted without demanding receipts. And you took without limits, without guilt. Effective immediately, I withdraw too. There will be no more transfers, loans, cosigns, or emergency funds. The foundation is closed. The ATM is offline. I am no longer your financial plan. If you need something, ask each other or ask Google. Happy belated birthday to me. Then I turned off my phone. At 6:58 a.m., my phone began buzzing on the nightstand. It was Isla. I let it ring. Then, Mom, 3 times in a row. I didn't touch it. By 7:11, the voicemail inbox was full. My sister texted, "You can't be serious. You're just cutting us off." I didn't respond. I felt a strange sense of calm, a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was done being their safety net. It was time they faced the consequences of their actions without relying on me to bail them out. I had given enough, and now I was finally taking back control of my life. I want to share something with you all. Something that's been weighing on me for a while now. It's about family, about the expectations we place on each other and the invisible lines we draw sometimes without even realizing it. There's this moment that stands out, a moment that really encapsulated where things went wrong for us. It was a typical morning. I got up, went through my usual routine, made coffee with oat milk, just like I always do. But everything was different. There was this silence, a silence that was louder than anything anyone could have said. That silence, it was my own way of screaming, of trying to make them understand where I stood. But of course, silence never stopped anyone from trying to push their way in. It was early when Isa showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole, and I knew what was coming. She was tapping her foot, like she was ready to scold me, like I was a child who needed to be told off. I didn't want to let her in. I didn't want to hear what she had to say because I knew it would be the same thing I'd heard so many times before. But I opened the door, just a crack, just enough to meet her gaze. Her lips were already curled into that familiar scowl. She couldn't believe I wouldn't let her in. But I hadn't invited her. I said it calmly, trying to keep my emotions in check. She scoffed, crossed her arms, and told me I'd lost my mind. She couldn't understand why I was cutting off the foundation, why I was pulling away. To her, it was about what I was doing to them, to the family. But to me, it was about reclaiming a part of myself that I'd lost. We talked, or rather, she talked, and I listened. She brought up Cancun, the digital detox retreats, all the things that were supposed to make us better, but just felt like more ways to escape reality. She accused me of thinking I was better than them because I had a decent job. But that wasn't it. I was better because I kept showing up for them, even when they didn't deserve it. I paid her rent when she got fired, covered her health insurance when she didn't bother with Cobra. I was their safety net, and they took it for granted. I told her that helping didn't mean I signed up to carry everyone's baggage forever. She tried to make it about my birthday, about me overreacting, but it wasn't just that. It was everything. They didn't forget my birthday. They just decided it wasn't important enough. Dinner was too far, gas was too expensive, whatever excuse made them feel better. But she didn't deny it. She just told me I'd made my point, that I'd hurt everyone just to feel powerful. But that wasn't it. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to stop hurting myself. I closed the door, not with a slam, but with a sense of finality. It was like closing a chapter, or maybe like sealing a casket, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up again. A new message, another attempt to pull me back in. They said it was tearing the family apart, that we needed to talk. But they'd had 34 years to talk, and I'd stopped listening to promises a long time ago. Now I listen to actions. That's when the manipulation really kicked into high gear. A group chat was created and everyone was added. It was all the usual tactics: guilt, pressure, trying to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. Devin chimed in about his bills. Issa mentioned Riley, my niece, trying to tug at my heartstrings. And then came the final blow. A private message from Mom about Dad's heart, saying if anything happened to him, it would be my fault. I dropped my phone like it was on fire. Even after everything, they were still playing the same games, still trying to bend me to their will with guilt. But something inside me shifted. I picked up the phone, hit record, and spoke into the mic with a clarity I'd never felt before. This was my message to them, to my family. For every call, every guilt trip, every time they ignored me until they needed something. I wasn't angry. I was done. Done being their bailout, their backup plan, their punching bag. They said it was tearing the family apart, but in reality, there was never a family to begin with. There was a moment, a precise moment, when I realized I was done. I remember sitting on my couch staring at my phone, feeling an emptiness that was both freeing and disconcerting. I typed a message, something final, and sent it off to the family group chat. No family. There was a bank with a heart, and that bank just closed. I owe you nothing. Not an explanation, not a reply, not another cent. Goodbye. After that, I left the chat entirely. It felt like closing a heavy door behind me, muffling the noise of demands and expectations. That night, my phone rang again. I picked it up, already knowing what to expect. Ella's voice was on the other end, filled with panic. She said someone had frozen her account, and her landlord was threatening eviction. She asked me what I had done. I stayed silent. She accused me of letting my family go homeless. I just hung up. 2 hours later, another call came from a different number. This time, it was Devin. He tried to reason with me, asking if I could just turn the support back on for this month. I didn't respond. By the end of the night, my phone had rung 27 times. As I sat alone in my silent apartment, I poured myself another glass of wine, turned on some jazz, and watched the city lights flicker from my window. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something I hadn't expected: freedom. The next day, I woke up to sunlight streaming into my room. There was no vibrating phone, no urgent email, no desperate message from someone needing something from me. Just the warm, golden silence of a peaceful morning. In that silence, I realized something strange. I didn't feel panic or guilt. Instead, I felt peace, as if my nervous system had finally powered down after years of being on high alert. But peace is a strange thing when you're used to living in a constant state of emergency for everyone else. For the first week, I kept checking my phone instinctively, expecting some kind of request or demand. But nothing came. Not from Mom, not from Isla, not even from Devin. At first, I thought they were finally giving me space. I was wrong. They were regrouping. Silence in their world wasn't a sign of surrender. It was just a pause before the next attempt to pull me back in. That weekend, I decided to take a drive out to the coast. I left my phone on airplane mode and spent hours just sitting by the ocean, watching the waves crash against the rocks. For the first time in a long time, I had no thoughts of family, no burdens to carry. Just the sound of the ocean doing what it had done long before I existed and what it would continue to do long after I'm gone. That night I slept soundly, uninterrupted, for the first time in over a year. In the days that followed, I began to reclaim pieces of myself that had been lost. I joined a gym, started working on a short story that had been sitting on my laptop since 2018, signed up for cooking classes. Perhaps the boldest move was applying to speak at a local TEDx event. My topic was emotional bankruptcy and how families can drain us, and more importantly, how we can take ourselves back. But just as I was beginning to build this new version of myself, the past found a way to intrude. A letter arrived in the mail without a return address. Inside was a stiff piece of paper with a typed message. It said I was being unreasonable, that I had overreacted. It reminded me that family should help each other and that I had hurt everyone by shutting down the support. There was no love or apology, just a sense of shame packed neatly into font size 14. I fed it into the shredder without a second thought. But as life would have it, unexpected things happen. 3 days later, my doorman called up to tell me that a woman was asking for me. She claimed to be my cousin. I was taken aback. I hadn't seen Tiffany in over a decade. She was the other black sheep of the family, the one who had dared to call out my mother's hypocrisy during a Thanksgiving dinner back in 2011 and had been exiled from family gatherings ever since. I remember the exact moment when I saw her standing there. It had been so long since I'd heard from Tiffany, but there she was in front of me, in combat boots and a motorcycle jacket, clutching a file folder. She greeted me with a simple, "Hey, Alex," and assured me she wasn't there to borrow money. That made me laugh, a genuine laugh that I hadn't felt in weeks. It was like a small crack in the heavy cloud that had been hanging over me. We sat in my apartment just talking for over an hour, sharing stories, venting about life, and even cracking a few jokes. It felt comforting, like a reminder of simpler times. But then, she slid the folder across the table toward me and everything changed. Inside that folder were screenshots, emails, and bank statements that turned my world upside down. They showed me a side of my family I had been blind to. Issa, Devin, even my mom, they were all involved. They had been siphoning money from the foundation, not just for emergencies, but by billing reimbursements to a second account. Tiffany had discovered it all while working at the accounting firm my cousin Devin once used. There was a shell account listed under Alexandra M. Family Trust Extended. It bore my name, but I had never created it. They did, and they used it to funnel an extra $28,000 over the past year without my knowledge or consent. Tiffany had dug into it out of curiosity and maybe a bit of revenge. She admitted she hated how they treated me, and what she found was nothing short of criminal. My hands were shaking as I sat there. I wanted to feel anger, but all I felt was a sense of finality. This was the proof I didn't know I needed. They hadn't just taken advantage of me, they had stolen from me, looked me in the eyes, and lied with smiles on their faces. Tiffany offered to help me pursue legal action. She had contacts, legal advice, and even knew an investigative journalist who would devour this story. But I didn't want a courtroom battle. I craved something cleaner, something definitive. I opened my laptop and typed a single sentence. As of today, Alexandra M. is not responsible for debts incurred under fraudulent family authorization. I added that legal counsel had been retained and BCC my family. Then quietly, anonymously, I sent everything to the IRS. 2 weeks later, I received a voicemail from Issa. Her voice was trembling. She said, "Alexandra, we're being audited. Someone reported us. Devin's freaking out. Mom's crying. Please, was it you?" I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted the message and booked a weekend trip to Denver. There, I delivered a TEDx talk to a room full of strangers who applauded as if I'd handed them the key to their own liberation. I shared my story, how I'd funded every lie, confused giving with loving, and how I finally chose myself. When I stepped off the stage, a young woman in the front row stood up and said, "Thank you, I didn't know I was allowed to stop." Neither did I until that moment. It's been a little over 6 months now, 6 months since I set up a dinner and no one showed up. 6 months since my sister told me my birthday was too far to drive for. 6 months since my mother claimed they were too exhausted to visit, only to attempt withdrawing over $3,000 that very night from the foundation I had built in silence. 6 months since I finally said, "No more." And in all that time I haven't spoken to any of them. Not Issa, not Mom, not Devin. Yet, ironically, I've never heard from them so much. The group chats I left continue to buzz without me. I receive passive-aggressive voicemails and letters dripping with guilt and subtle threats. My mom sometimes leaves muted, tearful messages. Devin's girlfriend even sent me angry DMs, accusing me of destroying a family legacy and telling me I should be ashamed. A family legacy? Is that what they call the fraudulent account they created under my name? The one they siphoned $28,000 from? Yes, I dismantled what was built on guilt, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because I didn't just walk away from them, I walked toward myself for the first time in my adult life. It's liberating, like finally living in my own skin, not in the emotional uniform they dressed me in as the responsible one, the ATM, the martyr. You want closure? This is what closure looks like. Issa's eviction notice became public record 2 months ago. Her landlord didn't find her spiritual retreats and wellness blogs sufficient collateral. I remember the moment clearly when I decided to finally stand up for myself. It was like a switch flipped inside me. For years, I had been the one everyone leaned on, the one who held everything together, even when it felt like I was falling apart. Devin, my ex, had been part of that life. We were tangled in financial messes, mostly of his making, and it took everything I had to untangle myself from his grasp. I discovered that the IRS had caught up with his fake consulting write-offs. They froze his accounts, and while part of me felt vindicated, I didn't press charges. The paper trail Tiffany, our mutual acquaintance, provided was enough to bring everything to light. I didn't need to do more. Devin sent me an email, just 3 words. "You happy now?" I replied with 2. Absolutely liberated. For the first time in years, I felt free, like I could breathe without the weight of his deceit on my shoulders. My mom, though, was a different story. She still writes me those long letters filled with poetic manipulation. Phrases like, "I just wanted the best for everyone," and "You know I love you, even if I didn't say it enough," are scattered throughout. She tries to remind me of who I used to be, like the time she sent a childhood photo of me holding a Lego spaceship. It was captioned, "Remember when you used to build things instead of breaking them?" I decided to frame that photo, but not because I missed her or the past. It served as a reminder that I used to create for joy, not out of obligation. And now I'm back to that place. The novel I buried for years is finally finished. It's called Dinner at Sick Story of Conditional Love. My publisher told me it made them cry, that it felt like a revolution, disguised as a confession. The book is dedicated to 2 people, Melanie Aya, my ex-best friend, and Ken Riley, my niece. Melanie was someone I quietly helped years ago. I sent her $500 to escape an abusive relationship. She now lives in Portland with her wife and their daughter. Out of the blue, she emailed me saying, "That money saved my life. Your silence spoke louder than their noise." It was the validation I didn't know I needed. As for Ken, she sent me a letter written on lined paper with a rainbow sticker on the envelope. "I miss you. Mommy says you're not mad anymore, but she still cries. Will you ever come back? If I bake your favorite cookies, would that help?" Her words gutted me, but I knew I couldn't go back. Instead, I mailed her a book, The Little Prince, with highlighted passages about taming, love, and responsibility. Inside, I wrote, "I will always be here, just not always where you expect. You are not responsible for fixing grown-ups. You are free." I still send Ken birthday gifts anonymously, hoping that one day, if she grows into someone who chooses truth over tradition, I'll be able to tell her everything. As for myself, I've built a new life. I no longer check my bank account with dread or wake up worried about who I forgot to save. I've learned to set boundaries. Not walls, but gates. Some people get in, like Julia. Julia is a social worker I met after my TEDx talk in Denver. She and I now share Saturday mornings, coffee dates, inside jokes, and therapy breakthroughs. She doesn't want anything from me but honesty when she asks, "How are you?" I believe she wants the real answer. She was the first person to tell me, "You didn't break your family. You broke the system that was crushing you." And she was right. Because here's what no one tells you. Healing sometimes looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like blocking a phone number, It can look like saying no without explanation and lighting a match to the foundation they built on your guilt. Walking away as the smoke rises behind you is not cruel, it's survival. To anyone who has ever been the silent giver, the backbone no one thanked, the forgotten birthday, you're not cruel for stopping. You're not broken for saying enough. You're not selfish for surviving. I didn't lose my family, I lost their version of who they thought I should be.